Can I quickly mention something that's got nothing to do with anything?
Of course.
I lit a candle, a cherry blossom candle, and I found myself writing poetry earlier for no reason.
What?
I don't know what it was.
What about?
Just like romantic shit, you know? If I was to write romantic things to a lover, essentially, that's what I wrote down. Cheesy as fuck stuff.
Are you sure that your cherry-scented candle wasn't actually a love potion,
Probably
sir?
it is, because I'm feeling a whole bunch of things for everybody.
You're like, wow, love is in the air. I shall write romantic poetry. Meanwhile, I'm over here, like, typing about death and despair.
There's something romantic about death, you know? There's some...
There is something romantic about death. Mm-hmm. That's why I like writing about death. It's wonderful. And that's also why I like researching about death, sir. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love my topic today. Also, sir.
I will not stop you from talking about your topic.
Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, technical difficulties beyond our control are delaying our presentation.
And now good morning to everyone in my nice audience.
Station operates on a frequency of 1,406 kilohertz.
Completion of general mobilization.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So today, Thomas, a very, very common last name. I am jumping on the Victorian Gothic bandwagon.
It's a bandwagon?
It is, because, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, all the goths of this day and age, they kind of take their inspiration from Victorian Gothic.
It's true.
So, it's a bandwagon in a way. It's an aesthetic. And I know, like, although I'm slightly late, and we probably should have done this whole thing on Halloween. So sad. Tear, tear, tear. But it doesn't matter, because the macabre is timeless.
You could just tell people we recorded before Halloween.
No, that's cheating.
Hey, everybody, we recorded this on October 29th.
No, on the 31st.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyways, so listen, it doesn't matter, even if we didn't record it on the 31st, macabre is timeless. Wow, I said that really weird. The macabre is timeless.
So dramatic.
Exactly. And so, like, when I was researching lace making, that's kind of when I stumbled on a whole bunch of really cool things about the Victorian era, and it, like, tickled my fancy, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna look that up. And also, you know, inspired by the Addams Family. But, like, I saw things for, like, which theories for why this era was so spooky and why there was such an emphasis? Whoa, I really can't speak today. Okay, let me start over that sentence. So, I found theories for why this era was so spooky and why there was such an emphasis on death rituals and just, you know, death itself in general. So there's a lot of theories for this phenomenon, but today I'll be going over just a few, and then it'll be story time. Yay!
I gotta say, the only thing I know about Victorian Macabre is the photographs.
The death portraits.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about that. Yeah. But there's so much more.
I'm sure. There's a lot of creepy stuff I know, but, like...
But no. But, like, why? Do you know why this was a thing? Do you have an idea of why?
I assume it was just, like, just that's when, like you were saying, like, the art and the poetry and books came out about this. But why did they come out? That's the real question. Yeah.
Haha. The chicken or the egg. So actually, the whole, I'm going to say aesthetic, even though it's not really legitimate to say aesthetic, but, like, the whole Gothic ambiance existed before the full Gothic writers and poets started writing. Like, for example, Edgar Allan Poe, he only started writing after, like, the Gothic elements started really taking hold. Even Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, like, she was starting to come in with, like, the Romantic period writings, but it was also because of, like, anyways, you'll see. We're gonna get there. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Alrighty. So to give you a bit of background of, like, what I'm gonna be talking about to place you in the Victorian Gothic, I want you to think about a woman, okay? A woman with a big black lace dress, black veils in front of her face, because she's a mourning widow. She has frames of locks of her dead loved one's hair on her walls, twisted into flowers and ornaments and paisleys. She also has death portraits, which, you know, like we were saying, pictures where you take a picture with your dead loved one. She has those on her walls as well. And she keeps them as a memento in her soul. There are also tales of ravens, murders, and mysterious, seemingly paranormal happenings. But why all of this spookiness, you may ask, sir?
May I remind you, you're not actually wearing a black cloak, so you don't have to pretend you are.
But it's so much fun. I am wearing a black cloak in my imagination.
You got the finger,
I'm
you got the
constantly
finger
wearing-
wrinkling going on.
Oh yes, oh yes, always, dude. This is like the way to go. All right.
Yeah.
So reason number 1 for all this spookiness. Now we get into the historical tidbits because, you know, this is a historical podcast, so we must absolutely have some history in it. So, what period was during the Victorian era? So we had, you know, Victorian England, but what was happening that was really big and really intense?
Does it rhyme with Minmustrial Memrevolution?
Yes, it does. So the Industrial Revolution. Due to the industrialization, which just happened to be going on at exactly the same time as Queen Victoria's reign, death was everywhere. And do you know why death was everywhere, good sir?
No. Tell me anyways.
All right. Because factories, big factories were in the city. And the places where the workers were living, so the workers' neighborhoods or the workers' quarters, were extremely densely populated and super poorly constructed. So you had, you know, ceilings falling down on people, floorboards are rotting, people are throwing their poopy water out their windows. It's essentially 1700s France, but like in the mid 1800s. So these horrible living conditions were the perfect breeding ground for diseases, especially waterborne diseases such as dysentery, typhoid, and cholera that got spread around when people drank in water infected with essentially fecal matter, so poopy water. There were also high levels of other highly transmittable diseases such as smallpox, scarlet fever, measles, and tuberculosis, which colloquially is at the time was called consumption. So have you ever like read books where people are like, alas, my wife, she died from consumption, and you're like, huh, the what? Well, that was tuberculosis. So mini side note, do you know the story of Typhoid Mary?
It sounds familiar. I've heard it. I think I've heard it.
Oh,
I also have
dude.
something to add later on. I got it later on, but keep going. I got 2 things to add. So let me hear your thing first.
Well, I'm not done. Part of the
Okay.
industrialization, there's like a side note, like we're getting
Okay.
places. But you probably have things that add to that as well. Okay, so Typhoid Mary. I read this so I was actually in the McGill Library, in the basement, in like the guts of Redpath, and I was kind of just like going through all of like the collections, and I was in the section for like venereal diseases in Victorian England. And
as you do.
So as you do. So as you were in venereal disease, right next to venereal disease was tuberculosis and typhoid. And every single book on typhoid was about freaking Typhoid Mary. So I was like, who is this lady? What is going on? So I looked it up. And oh, what a story. So now, typhoid is a disease that causes nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting. It's a type of salmonella, so you know that stuff that everyone panics about on like raw fish and eggs. So it's a type of salmonella, so it survives in food and water and gets transmitted when someone eats or drinks infected food or water. So Typhoid Mary, her actual name is Mary Mallon, and this whole thing happened in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it actually extended up until the mid 1930s. All of this happened in New York. So she got typhoid, but had absolutely no symptoms, like zero. So she was an asymptomatic carrier of the disease, which meant she could spread it around without even realizing she had it, okay? So to make things worse, Mary worked in the kitchens of wealthy New York estates. Remember what I said about how typhoid gets transmitted through poopy food and water? Well, Typhoid Mary, she would go to the bathroom, do her business, not wash her hands properly, come back into the kitchen, start cooking food, and now all of her typhoidy bacteria on her hands are getting into the food, and then people are eating her food and getting typhoid disease. So everywhere she worked, there was always an outbreak, and she was the only one, or like one of the few, who wouldn't get the disease. So in her the first estate that had a huge outbreak, she actually kept working there for a while, up until the employer's daughter died. And then the guy was like, okay, no, this is fucking stupid. Like, we need to figure out where this is coming from, because my daughter is dead. I am in mourning. I am triste. I am very sad. And so he did the whole investigation, and they found out that it was typhoid. It was Mary Mallon who was distributing this disease. So what they did was they quarantined her for 3 years. They sent her away to this like hospital that quarantines typhoid patients. And yeah, she stayed there for 3 years. Then the people in the hospital were like, after 3 years, they were like, okay, we'll let you go, but as long as you promise that you will never, ever, ever work again in a kitchen, because you can easily transmit your disease that way. So she said, okay, I promise. So she goes back into the workforce, and she's not working in kitchens because she promised she wouldn't, but she's working as a laundress, so like a lady who does laundry. But as she was doing her, like being a laundress, she wasn't making as much money, and she also got injured. Like, she got a huge wound on her arm that started getting really infected, and she couldn't work in laundry anymore. So she was like, maybe I'm gonna go back to the kitchens. So what she does is she changes her name, okay? She like changes her name to something completely different. I don't actually remember what her name was. Sorry, that's like a memory gap on my part. Too. But like she changes her name, and she starts working in kitchens again. And once again, every single place that she works, there are outbreaks, okay? And every time there's an outbreak, because they know that Mary has been released, the police are coming and trying to like find her. But every single time that they get to the place where there was an outbreak, she had already left and like changed her name again. And like she leaves and changes her name and works elsewhere. And then finally, at one point, the police found her and they arrested her, and then they isolated her, but it was like basically they were putting her in exile in a cottage where she would like wash beakers for pathologists, and she was there until she died, and then she had a stroke, and that was the end of her days. But yeah, that's Typhoid Mary. Right? Like, what a freaking and like to consider that like there are books written about her. That's how notorious this lady is.
Is it true? Is there proof of this?
It is. Okay. It is true. There's even pictures of her. Like, this is a documented case, like a police case, because she just, it is true. Yeah. You could even look her up. You could see like pictures of this lady and be like, you were the cause of so many deaths because you didn't wash your hands properly.
That's your life legacy, giving people typhoid. To the point that her name is Typhoid Mary. And I'm pretty sure that the term Typhoid Mary was then colloquially used for like anybody who had typhoid and was a carrier. And they're like, oh, Typhoid Mary. Yeah. It's special. It makes me wonder who the original Tom was in Talking Tom.
Talking Tom?
Yeah, don't be a Talking Tom, you know? Who's the original Tom? I mean,
who was the original Tom? It might just be like, because Tom is a very common name. And John. Tom and John.
I was about to say, what about Jay Walker? Who was Jay? But actually, I know who that one. That's way off topic.
What? Oh my god, wait, hold on a second. Tell me this, because I'm actually really curious.
A Jay was an insult back in the day. You're a Jay. I mean, you're an idiot. You're stupid.
Oh my gosh.
And a Jay Walker, it's to stop people. It's to stop people from walking. Because back then, cars were brand new. So people were walking in front of cars, behind cars. There was no such thing as a street.
Oh my God.
to
Right.
stop people from crossing the street that would call them Jays. Idiots.
Hey,
Jay,
you
Jay,
Jay.
you know?
Jay, it's a jaywalker. Oh, wow. The more you know.
So,
Thank you.
that thing I wanted to say earlier about
Yes.
cholera and fun stuff. Did you know the River Thames, the river that flows through London, was declared legally dead by the government because it was so infected and so if you fell in, you die, essentially. You don't.
It was like, yeah.
It was so contaminated. The river was declared legally dead.
Jeez Louise.
All the way up until I think the 50s, where it made a miraculous recovery, and now it's safe to swim in. Not really, but it's not.
Relatively.
I wouldn't. It's really interesting is they drain the Thames every couple of months, and at the bottom you can find diamond rings and stuff from old ladies who accidentally dropped it in the water in the 1910s, you know, bicycles from 100 years. They drain it, and there's so much garbage in it from 100, 200 years just collected at the bottom.
That's an archaeologist's
Oh,
dream.
yes, essentially.
Wow. Just going through people's garbage, being like, ooh, look at this.
There was...
Oh, I would love that.
Another thing I wanted to mention was you were talking about Victorian households. What was the most dangerous thing in a Victorian household?
Tell me.
Stairs. Stairs killed more people in a Victorian household than anything else.
Because they'd collapse? Because people don't know how to take the stairs?
Well, not only that. Yeah, basically that, plus their dresses as well. They would walk down the stairs with their dresses.
Oh, shit, it's
the
true.
Stairs. You've never been in a Victorian home before? They're
no.
steep. They are thin because they're thin houses, so they got to make the stairs thin, and they are steep, and they go straight up, and they're curved, and it's a nightmare climbing up and down those stairs.
Ooh, and imagine with dresses, like already it's difficult going up the stairs with long dresses. Imagine steep stairs with long dresses. I get it. Women just like trip over, bash their head against the stairs, and die out cold.
There was an amazing documentary I watched on that. It's basically the Victorian household, how it evolved from then to now, and the kind of technologies that came and went, like light bulbs and stuff. Light bulbs, if you touched it, you would die because the electric socket was exposed. So it was very common for kids to walk up and touch it and just dead.
There you go. So
that goes back to what you're
imagine.
saying about so many deaths.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's like technologies as well. When you have technologies that aren't well developed, but they're widely spread, you're going to have some deaths. I mean, look at that. Light bulbs. Absolutely no care for security.
I'd say...
Yet they're still being
I'd say
sold.
an ignorance. I wouldn't say a lack of care. I'd say a lack of understanding.
Exactly. But I mean, lack of understanding that wouldn't pass in these days. You know what I mean? Like, all new technologies are used with much care. Whereas back then it was just like, whoa, look how much stuff we're inventing. Spread it, spread it, spread it, spread it, spread it.
I gotta send you this documentary because you could do a whole topic on it. Another one was green.
Yes.
There was a certain color of green that was extremely popular.
You were telling me this.
Yes.
And the green.
The green would paint the walls with it, and it would kill people. And they would make dresses out of it, and it would kill them.
But there's a shade of yellow as well, I believe, that did pretty much the same thing, and it was like the arsenic based.
Yeah.
And so the walls were painted and wallpaper was dyed with this arsenic based dye, and then people would go absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Oh man. See, like, okay, hold on a second. Where's my book? This book, The Royal Art of Poison. I need to read the entire thing and just do an entire special episode on just poison, because like there's so much good stuff in this book, like about everything that we're talking about right now, like poison, even makeup. The first episode we did, my goodness, like so much cool stuff. Anyways, for another day. So okay. So where was I? Okay. So disease in workers' neighborhoods, right? So because of all this disease and dangerous jobs the factory workers would be doing, the average life expectancy for men was 40 years and 42 years for women. And the mortality rate for children under the age of 5 was 33%. So that's like 1 in 3 kids died before the age of 5 because of disease, poor nutrition, heavy pollution, accidents like touching a light bulb, for example. And like after the age of 5, it was mostly work accidents.
Did you know they wouldn't name their kids?
Unfortunately, that got added. Yeah, because
to the age of 6.
they would just die. Yeah, that's... Death is everywhere in the Victorian age. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what jobs kids were doing, and I know you know what kind of jobs kids are doing, but to go over it anyways, kids who were 5 to 9 years old would be given just about any job that was in tight spaces. So chimney sweeps, and oh my gosh, I saw the cutest picture of a kid, chimney sweeper. He was literally probably the size of like probably couldn't even see over a kitchen table, and he had his little like cap and his chimney sweep, and he was covered in coal, and I was like, oh, this is adorable, but so
Was he
awful
smoking?
Because he probably died. He wasn't. But they smoked, and it's like, oh my god. Anyways, wild.
It's their little hands that was their biggest. They can get in the small places. It was also common for the machines to rip their hands off, but
Yes,
easy
that's
come,
what
easy
I was
go.
gonna say. Like basically, like the kids would be sent in to clean, especially in the textile industry. Kids would be sent in to clean and unjam the looms. And when looms are jammed, oftentimes they move either really slowly or they stop moving altogether, depending on how jammed the loom is. And so imagine a little kid goes in there to unjam the loom, unjams it, and the moment they unjam it, the loom starts spinning at full speed again. Like, oof. Because oftentimes, like, they wouldn't even turn off the machines to fix them because that would lose time, because it took a certain amount of time to start up the machine and they wanted to be as productive as possible. So stopping the machine for repairs was like a huge waste of productivity. So little kids would just buy their hands ripped off into the machine, and, you know, that was that. So gruesome. Yeah. I know. So now we can understand death was all around them. Death was everywhere, especially with the working class.
There's also
people are diseased.
Also the workhouses. You got those as well.
Yeah. The workhouses, but the workhouses were also a special case because people in workhouses were very isolated in the workhouses. So there was a lot of death happening in them. But I mean, it was kind of like a taboo subject for everyone outside of the workhouse.
You don't tell people you lived in a workhouse. You don't.
Exactly. You don't tell people you don't tell people what you see in the workhouse. You don't tell people what you do. Nothing. Like, it's not a topic that people want. Because I mean, even...
Can you name one celebrity who lived in a workhouse?
Oh, no, I
Charlie
can't.
Chaplin.
Charlie
Chaplin was raised in a workhouse. No his mother was insane, so they took him away.
Oh, man.
And they could put him in a workhouse.
Damn. I didn't know
He was a child worker in the workhouse.
And he survived.
With all of his parts.
Congratulations to him. With all of his parts. Wow.
Good
times. Okay. So all these people, heavily diseased, working in horrible conditions, they were also going to work while they were sick and injured. So they were walking in with like a heavily necrosed arm, and they're like, hey, how's it going? You know, they'd like walk in and all was well. But, you know what this made me think of as I was writing it down? I was like, people walking in with like a necrosed arm, just a flesh wound. Anyways, so why were they going into work? Because they know they would lose their jobs if they wouldn't, because there were lineups of people outside of the factories every day waiting for jobs and waiting for someone to leave so that they could take their place. So it was very much an atmosphere of lots of stress, lots of death, lots of disease, lots of injury. So we can understand why everyone was kind of like in the deep depths of death, right? And I'm pretty sure everybody saw a corpse by the age of like 10.
Did you notice? Black was a common color as well? If you look at the 1700s, you're gonna bring that up. Am I going too far ahead?
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is actually the next thing. So black in general is the color of mourning
I was gonna say
for...
there were so many funerals. They said, screw it. They just dressed up for the day, ready for a funeral.
No, but that's the thing. Okay, so let me explain why. This
Wait,
boggled
am
my
I
mind,
right?
okay? You
Jeez.
yes,
What
yes and no. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on.
Oh my
hold on,
God.
hold on. So basically what happened was people, black is the color you wear for funerals if you are a Christian, correct? So now, it just so happened that in 1861, the Prince Consort, or in other words, Queen Victoria's husband, Albert, suffers a tragic demise and dies prematurely at the age of 42. As we know, Queen Victoria was an extremely influential lady, so when her husband died and she went into mourning, okay? Like mourning. She secluded herself.
She never got over it.
Only wore... Yeah, no. She only wore black for the rest of her life and swore to a life of sadness, okay? Now, in solidarity, the entire country, okay, also started going into mourning. So they wanted to support their queen. Albert also died on the 14th of December, so Christmas that year was a no-go. So think about it. Already you're in the depths of despair. Now the queen's husband dies and the whole country goes into mourning, okay? Gloomy atmosphere was everywhere. The entire country was in, just funeral mode, okay? And because of Victoria's mourning, the population followed suit for their own loved ones' deaths as well. So everyone wore black, everyone at the time, they all wore black to support Albert. And because they were supporting Albert and Queen Victoria, they started doing the same mourning rituals for their loved ones because Queen Victoria was such an influential lady. So essentially what you said was right. Like, they would wake up in the morning and they just put on black because they're like, shit, I'm mourning anyways, and there's 10 people that died in my family today, so I just got a funeral time every day.
Well.
It's funeral every day.
Oh, well.
But before Prince Albert died, this whole mourning thing wasn't such a big deal. Like, people wouldn't wear black when someone died. Even if there was huge death around them, they would just kind of go on with their days because there was so much death around them anyways. But because Queen Victoria's husband died and she kind of popularized the idea of big mourning, everybody had to mourn just like she did. Okay? So now, as the population follows suit and starts mourning, there are various rituals that come to being because everyone is just in the atmosphere of funeral time all the time. So.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Ready?
Yes.
Dong, dong, dong. A death. You walk into your beloved's bedchamber, and there they lie, pale as a ghost, taken by consumption. Their white nightclothes soaked with sweat and blood spots. You sit by their side and begin to weep. All the clocks are stopped at the time of the death, and the mirrors, they are covered to prevent the loved one's spirit from escaping and getting caught in the glass. A wreath is hung on the door to let everyone know that a death has occurred and that a family is in mourning. For 3 to 4 days, your beloved is left where they died, not moved nor shifted, and you watch over them day and night to ensure that they really have died and are not just in a coma. Even after 3 days of wake, you order a plot with a death bell, just to make sure that if you have accidentally buried your love alive, they can always ring a bell from in their grave, ding, 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 and you can get them out. Because your Aunt Elizabeth had rung the bell after being buried for 10 days. You wouldn't want to trap anyone. Once the wake is over, you can finally put them to rest, but not before taking a death portrait and weaving their locks of hair into a hair flower to commemorate the moment and have them in your heart forever. You would go on to serve death biscuits wrapped in funeral notices, sealed with black wax and imprinted with a skull. Finally, after all the rituals are done, they are buried, and you enter full mourning, where you remember the sadness of your lover's death fully and completely by wearing nothing but black and feeling nothing but sadness, just as Queen Victoria did, because now death is embodied into your being. So, you can imagine that these rituals are very time-consuming, to say the least. And, I mean, imagine, every time someone died, you have to go through this entire process to kind of just mourn, and then you're in full mourning for, if you're a widow, you're in full mourning for 2 years. So that means wearing black, not going to parties, not smiling. If your picture is taken, you have to put on the saddest face of your life. Okay. And then after those 2 years of full mourning, you have a year of half mourning where you can wear some purple and white along with your big black dress. Okay. So all these things. Yes. Tell me.
Do you know why graves in the Victorian era had guards around them? Like fenced in. How do I explain it? They were like caged down, essentially.
Tell me.
Grave robbers.
Oh.
But you know who was grave robbing?
Who was grave
robbing? The universities.
Oh my god, to get holy shit. Okay, so this is a whole yes. Okay, so for scientific research, yeah. Right, for scientific research. Okay.
There was a case. So this is also there was a case in Scotland. I gotta mention it. There was a case in Scotland. Oh, you're drinking water and I'm really thirsty and it's torture.
Sorry.
So there was a case in Scotland where people would murder people essentially, and then take them to the universities. And the universities, they knew exactly what they were doing, but they needed the bodies. So they
were like, give them to me. It's fine.
I'll take your corpse off you. No questions asked. Here's your money. And they almost got caught because there was a really famous street beggar, a bum, who was very well known for having like rotten feet. And the university students looked at the body and they thought he looked familiar, but they couldn't tell because the doctors cut his feet off.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh.
So they were caged down, and mentioning your bells. Remember, you mentioned the bells. The reason they discovered that is because grave robbers would dig up the corpses. They would open the casket to find scratch marks inside the coffin. That's how they discovered.
And they were like, "Oh my god, they were alive."
That's how they discovered people were down there. Is because grave robbers were taking them up. See, it was all connected. See, it was all connected.
Thank you for that connection. It makes this whole thing so much better.
But I'm pretty sure the bells don't work. I'm 90%
the bells.
They didn't work.
They actually, they work because I have been cases. I read some cases where people rang the bell and they actually like. Because there were always guards and things around the cemetery listening around for the bells to ring. And apparently sometimes they did hear bells ring and they did dig up the person. So, like, it did happen and there were bells that worked. But this being said, after a certain period of time where science got better and they were able to better determine whether a person was dead or not, they kept the bells, but they were just decorative.
Okay.
They weren't actually connected into the grave. But for a short period of time, the bell was connected into the grave and the person was actually buried with the string in their hand. So like if ever anything happened, like they could ring the bell and then it would be,
I'm sure the first thing you think of when you wake up is ring the bell. You know, I don't think they would panic and they would lose the air and then they would die essentially.
Yeah, but also if it was popularized enough and they knew, then it would be a possibility. Maybe. You know, especially if it's buried. I mean, especially if the string is buried in their
probably
hand,
tie it around
like,
their arm.
You know what I mean?
That's what I would do.
So that if they start moving
in panic, then it just rings it automatically.
Exactly. So in the end, like I have read a few stories where there have been people dug up by the bell, but like I said, like after a certain point, the bell was just decorative. There was no string attached.
Here's your funeral. No strings attached.
There was no string attached. Okay, so talking about all this scientific purpose corpse situation, put yourself in like the position of a Victorian person, okay? A religious Victorian person, and as we all know, the stereotype for Victorians was prudish people. So imagine all of these like stereotypically prudish people who were being exposed to all these scientific discoveries, and now suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, and they're robbing my loved ones' graves. What kind of abomination is this? And, okay, tell me. For example, these people are very stressed. They're very freaking out because of all these scientific discoveries that are happening. What do people usually turn to when they're stressed or panicky or anxious?
I know exactly. I was about to bring this up.
What do they turn
Drugs.
to, Thomas?
No.
No. Well, maybe that's one of the
Alcohol.
things. But people turn to, people turn to ritual, right?
Oh.
So whether it be drugs,
How was
alcohol,
I supposed to get
or religion.
that? Ritual.
Well, it's like, ritual. People turn to like things they do commonly, right?
Yeah.
So they start praying. If they, smoke, they smoke. If they drink, they drink.
Yeah.
If they do drugs, they do drugs. But it's based in ritual practice, right? It's based in like what they feel comfortable doing and what's going to take their mind off of things. And for a lot of Victorians, what took their mind off of the absolute existential crises they were having because of all this scientific, discoveries that were being made, they turned to funeral rituals and death rituals. So the industrialization, as we know, it brought with it many scientific discoveries, right, and inventions that shook people's worldviews completely. Ever-improving medical discoveries made people question what it was that humans were doing in life, and if the medical modifications and cures that were being discovered were even ethical, or if we were going against the laws of nature. So novels like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is actually one example of many reactions to the new scientific discoveries, because it brings up the argument of, have we gone too far? And a lot of people felt that way. They did feel like science was taking them too far, especially medical advances. They just felt like things were moving too quickly and it just was going against nature, it was going against religion. But then Darwin came along and he had his theory of evolution, right? And there was a lot of questioning going around about religion and religious values as well. Like, if evolution is true, then is God even real? So everything everyone believed to be true was suddenly being shifted and like crumbling beneath their feet. And it was just, it was all really too much. And like I said before, people, when they're stressed and nothing feels stable anymore, it's like everything I knew was a lie. They turn to things that, they're used to. But yes, tell me about your drug use, Thomas, not your drug use, drug use in general.
Well, I mean, it's pretty common fact at this point that your prescription back then was, here, take a shot of heroin. So I'm pretty sure that also played a big part in when people are popping cocaine like it's Tylenol,
But even like there were a lot of psychiatry alienists were starting to be a thing at the time. Think Freud and people of the like. Yep. He's a little bit later on, but people like him were starting a little bit sooner. And I mean, in the end, what would he diagnose people with? Hysteria, and then here, have some cocaine, right? So hysteria, maybe because of the arsenic in the wallpaper, maybe because of the poison in their dyes for their dresses, maybe hysteria because everyone around them is dying and they have to wear black all the time. I mean, the Victorian era it was an interesting period.
It was also the height of beer. Beer was extremely, I don't think it was invented, but popularized around that time. There was something big to do with beer in the Industrial Revolution because they couldn't drink water. But beer...
Because it was polluted?
Yes, but beer was safe to drink. So nobody would drink water, but everybody would drink beer. So you got that on top of it. You got Johnny down the street who does the chimney sweeps, who does a bunch of cocaine and heroin, drinks nothing but beer. And 3 of his family members died last week. He's doing just fine.
He's doing great. And then he goes back to the alienist and he's like, listen, buddy.
Oh, crap. He fell in the Thames.
It's not going well. Oh, my God. Threw himself into the Thames. Death by Thames. Suicide by Thames.
Pretty sure that was a thing, too.
Oh,
Guaranteed cholera.
guaranteed cholera. Immediately just flesh-eating bacteria eat you away by
Can you imagine,
dust.
Can you imagine the smell, though? On a hot,
Of the
on
Thames?
a hot day?
Of London. Okay, I've thought about this very, very intensely on many occasions. And think about the amount of coal, amount of pollution that was in the air because they were burning coal. Imagine, just picture that. Imagine how smelly that must have been. And, you know, people are walking around, like, not only is there poop water all over the streets, the Thames is extremely polluted. The air is filled with coal. Listen, like, you're just breathing in particles. Like, your entire, oh my God.
The population was exploding, too. Everybody was moving in from the countryside. And there were more horses.
They were like, yeah, industrialization.
No refrigeration for meats. Animals could walk around the street, do what the hell they wanted, and
yep.
Good
times. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Imagine
so that's basically
blistering hot day, though. Oh man.
Don't even talk to me about a blistering hot day. Oof. I'm thinking about wintertime. Like, the snow is probably black. I feel like I read something saying that the snow actually was black.
That wouldn't surprise me, because
like, obviously the snow would fall and it was white, but then once it touched the ground, like, the pollution would kind of stick to the snow, and then everything would just be black. Yum.
What a time to be alive.
Oh, yes. Well, that's all my historical background. But now, it's story time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, little background. So, authors like Edgar Allan Poe, my favorite spooky man, he's American, but he did an amazing job at discussing all the Victorian themes, such as death, grief, love, loss, confusion, guilt, anxieties about the future. The story that I am going to read today is called The Telltale Heart, and it's a short story that is perfect example of like Victorian anxieties and like just in general the ideas of guilt and like, oh, so awesome. It's one of my favorite ones, honestly, because it really encompasses like, I don't know, just like Victorian anxiety, man. It's wonderful. And you know, like that like feeling you feel inside your soul when something's just off, something's just like effed up and you just can't really place your finger on it, but like it slowly drives you insane. Same vibe. So that's kind of what the story is. And also, actually, fun fact, the story is narrated by like an insane person, quote unquote. And so like, just, you know, to put you in context, think about like the people down, like Johnny down the street who's like taking cocaine and heroin and 10 of his family members died the other day. Okay, like keep that in mind when I'm reading it. Okay, so you don't know this one, right?
I don't know any Edgar Allan Poe ones.
Okay, well, anyways, this is I'm going to storytell it in my most storytelly way.
Dramatic.
Are you ready? Yes.
You should add music to this in post-production, by the way.
Oh my God, I should.
I got the perfect song for you too. Okay, so.
Okay. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. It's true. Yes, I have been ill, very ill. But why do you say that I've lost control of my mind? Why do you say that I am mad? Can you not see that I have full control of my mind? Is it not clear that I am not mad? Indeed, the illness only made my mind, my feelings, my senses stronger, more powerful even. My sense of hearing, especially, became more powerful. I could hear sounds I had never heard before. I heard sounds from heaven. I heard sounds from hell. Listen! Listen, and I will tell you how it happened. You will see, you will hear how healthy my mind is. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my head. There was no reason for what I did. I did not hate the old man. I even loved him. He had never hurt me. I did not want his money. I think it was his eye. His eye was like the eye of a vulture, The eye of one of those terrible birds that watch and wait while an animal dies and then fall upon the dead body and pull it to pieces to eat it. When the old man looked at me with his vulture eye, a cold feeling went up and down my back. Even my blood became cold. And so I finally decided I had to kill the old man and close that eye forever. So you think that I am mad? A madman cannot plan. But you should have seen me. During all of that week, I was as friendly to the old man as I could be, and warm and loving. Every night, about 12 o'clock, I slowly opened his door. And when the door was opened wide enough, I put my hand in, and then my head. In my hand, I held a light covered over with cloth so that no light showed, and I stood there quietly. Then, carefully, I lifted the cloth just a little so that a single thin, small light fell across that eye. For 7 nights I did this. 7 long nights, every night at midnight. Always the eye was closed, so it was impossible for me to do the work. For it was not the old man I felt I had to kill. It was the eye, his evil eye. And every morning I went to his room, and with a warm, friendly voice, I asked him how he had slept. He could not guess that every night, just at 12, I looked in at him as he slept. The 8th night, I was more than usually careful as I opened the door. The hands of the clock moved more quickly than did my hand. Never before had I felt so strongly my own power. I was now sure of success. The old man was lying there, not dreaming that I was at his door. Suddenly, he moved in his bed. You may think I became afraid, but no. The darkness in his room was thick and black. I knew he could not see the opening of the door. I continued to push the door slowly, softly. I put in my head. I put in my hand with the covered light. Suddenly, the old man sat straight up in bed and cried, "Who's there?" I stood quite still. For a whole hour, I did not move. Nor did I hear him again lie down in his bed. He just sat there, listening. Then I heard a sound, a low cry of fear, which escaped from the old man. Now I knew that he was sitting up in his bed, filled with fear. I knew that he knew I was there. He did not see me there. He could not hear me there. He felt me there. Now he knew that death was standing right there. Slowly, little by little, I lifted the cloth until a small, small light escaped from under it to fall upon that vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and my anger increased as it looked straight at me. I could not see the old man's face, only that eye, that hard blue eye, and the blood in my body became like ice. Have I not told you that my hearing had become unusually strong? Now I could hear a quick, low, soft sound like the sound of a clock heard through a wall. It was the beating of the old man's heart. I tried to stand quietly, but the sound grew louder. The old man's fear must have been great indeed, and the sound grew louder. My anger became greater and more painful. But it was more than anger. In the quiet night, in the dark silence of the bedroom, my anger became fear. For the heart was beating so loudly that I was sure someone must hear. The time had come. I rushed into the room, crying, "Die! Die!" The old man gave a loud cry of fear as I fell upon him and held the bed covers tightly over his head. Still his heart was beating, but I smiled as I felt that success was near. For many minutes that heart continued to beat, but at last the beating stopped. The old man was dead. I took away the bed covers and held my ear over his heart. There was no sound. Yeah, he was dead. Dead as a stone. His eye would trouble me no more. So I am mad, you say? You should have seen how careful I was to put the body where no one could find it. First, I cut off the head, then the arms and the legs. I was careful not to let a single drop of blood fall on the floor. I pulled up 3 of the boards that formed the floor and put the pieces of the body down there. Then I put the boards down again carefully, so carefully that no human eye could see that they had been moved. As I finished this work, I heard that someone was at the door. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning, but still dark. I had no fear, however, as I went down to open the door. 3 men were at the door, 3 officers of the police. One of the neighbors had heard the old man's cry and had called the police. These 3 had come to ask questions and to search the house. I asked the policeman to come in. The cry, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man, I said, was away. He had gone to visit a friend in the country. I took them through the whole house, telling them to search it all, to search it well. I led them finally to the old man's bedroom. As if playing a game with them, you see, I asked them to sit down and talk for a while. My easy, quiet manner made the policemen believe my story. So they sat talking with me in a friendly way, but although I answered them in the same way, I soon wished that they would go. You see, my head hurt, and there was a strange sound in my ears. I talked more and faster. The sound became clearer, and still they sat and talked. Suddenly I knew that the sound was not in my ears, it was not just inside my head. At that moment I must have become quite white. I talked still faster and louder, and the sound too became louder. It was quick, low, soft sound like the sound of a clock heard through a wall, a sound I knew well. Louder it became and louder. Why did the men not go? Louder, louder. I stood up and walked quickly around the room. I pushed my chair across the floor to make more noise to cover that terrible sound. I talked even louder, and still the men sat and talked and smiled. Was it possible that they could not hear? No, they heard, I was certain of it. They knew. Now it was they who were playing a game with me. I was suffering more than I could bear from their smiles and from that sound. Louder, louder, louder. Suddenly, I could bear it no longer. I pointed at the boards and cried, "Yes, yes, I killed him. Pull up the boards and you shall see. I killed him. But why does his heart not stop beating? Why does it not stop?" And that is the Telltale Heart.
No.
My favorite short story of all time. Actually, this one, and if ever you want to read it, which, oh my god, amazing, or maybe I'll read it at some point, but it's like 8 pages long, so I might make that like an entire episode. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper. Also an awesome short story. But yeah. And that is the Victorian Macabre for this lovely, amazing week.
Oh, but I had something to add.
Tell me.
It's just to support your argument that Victorian Macabre was a thing.
Go for
name
it.
a murderer.
I'm ready. Oh, Jack the Ripper.
The most famous murderer of all time. He only killed 4 people.
But yet.
We all know who he is. Sort of.
Oh, yeah.
We have all heard of him. We don't know who he is. But...
But I think it also comes down to, like, the drama that people felt. Like, I think in general, like, Queen Victoria was a very influential lady, and I think just the fact that everyone kind of just followed her blindly, that says something about the generation in general. The generation in general.
I don't think the average person was aware that the Queen was wearing black all the time. They probably didn't care. They probably heard it from somebody else that black, and then...
Oh, no,
you know what I mean?
But Thomas, the entire... No, they knew... Obviously, not because they saw her, but because the entire country stopped. Yeah. Like, you have to realize that when Prince Albert died, like, everything was shuttered. All the stores were ordered to be closed. The movie theaters were closed.
You said Edward.
I didn't say Edward. I said Albert.
Did you say Albert?
I said Albert.
I swear I heard you say Edward.
No, I said Albert.
Continue.
Anyways, so all the stores were shuttered, like, closed for a good 2 weeks, like, closed, done. All the movies stopped showing, everything stopped, like, all the movies, all the theater, all the play. I was like, movies weren't a thing. What am I talking about?
Confused me.
All the theaters closed. Like everything that was joyful stopped. So everyone was like, what the hell's happening? And obviously then the news broke. There were newspapers as well. And Queen Victoria kind of just like, that was what happened. Like she just shuttered everything down. The whole country went into mourning and everyone wore black in solidarity with her. And eventually they just took up her.
That's supposed to happen
like,
when
you know what
Elizabeth dies. Do you know about that, right? Modern Elizabeth?
Where the whole country.
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Wears black.
It's supposed to stop. And comedy shows, either stage or TV, are to go off the air for a whole month. There should be no comedy for a month, and the whole country is going to be in mourning for a month.
Damn.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
So it probably was a month or even more with Prince Albert.
Yeah. I hate when people call it Operation London Bridge, because it's not. It's I can see your eyes rolling. If you type in Operation London Bridge, you get a whole bunch of things about it, but I guarantee you it's not called
that. I love how it's Operation London Bridge has been a code name that referred to the plan for what will happen in the days after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Oh my god. What the hell?
It used to be a Hyde Park corner. You know about that, right?
Mm-mm.
When the king died, the prime minister's order was Hyde Park corner, where you call up the news agencies. It's code. You call up the news agencies to the Hyde Park corner, and they all knew what it meant.
Okay.
And nobody's to know what it means until the prime minister gives the order.
But yet everyone knows. So you know what's funny? Operation London Bridge is probably not called Operation
it's not.
London Bridge
I know
in
it's
reality.
not.
Like, we all know it. Or maybe originally it was, and then it leaked.
Yeah,
because
it's a shitty name.
It is.
It's supposed to say Operation Elizabeth Died. Would have been better.
Probably would have been. But I mean, Hyde Park Corner is pretty shitty of a name, too.
Yeah.
But it's very incognito.
Yes. That's what I mean. London Bridge is not incognito.
It's really not.
No.
It's like London Bridge is falling down, falling down. Oh, man. Yeah.
So, yeah.
What do you think it's called? What do you think they called her operation?
I don't know. It's hard to know. Because Hyde Park Corner is so... You don't think of that. It's, it's Hyde Park Corner.
But also, Hyde Park is a very important line.
The only thing that comes to my mind, which isn't that, is it's a Scottish street I knew of growing up. You always hear about it, called Upper Brook Street. And that's kind of Operation Upper Brook Street. Kind of sounds like a,
It does. Watch it be Operation Upper Brook Street.
Boris Johnson picks up the phone.
Operation
Upper
Brook Street?
Upper Brook Street. Yes.
Oh my god. I still can't get over how British Boris Johnson is.
Oh god. Yeah.
Jesus. Like, just doesn't get more British. You know what's funny? So, have you ever seen Boris Johnson when he was young?
Yes. He looks exactly
he
looks exactly the same.
He does, but he was like less disheveled.
I love his voice. His voice is so unique. It's like his own accent.
Mm-hmm.
Supermarket.
He's a very unique man.
Out here, outside of a supermarket, with the population comes together and buys groceries.
It's kind of like he's being posh, but also like
the thing is, he's an extremely smart man. That's what people don't really understand. Mm-hmm. He's fluent in ancient Greek. He's fluent in ancient Greek. He could recite, I think, the first 100 pages of the Iliad by heart. Yeah.
The hell?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an amazing debate between him and Mary Beard, who is a Roman historian. Basically, it's Greeks versus Roman, and they debate for 2 hours, and you feel smart listening to it. And
he's a smart man.
It's a great debate, though. I recommend. 10 out of 10.
I shall listen. What is it? Boris Johnson and
Mary Beard.
Mary Beard. Alrighty. I shall send.
It's one of those things you listen to while you're doing something.
Yeah. I need a lot of those.
Yeah. It's great, though. You just get to listen to Boris Johnson speak in ancient Greek.
Just his voice.
Yes.
Just his voice itself is like entertainment.
There was reporters that went to his house. He didn't want to ask questions because they were standing outside, and he brought them tea. He said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" "But Mr. Johnson, we'd like you to answer questions." "I don't want to answer questions until you have a cup of tea." Take it.
What the hell? This man is very special.
There's this whole thing. What was his great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies? That was.
Oh yeah, you sent me that. I think I watched it like 4 times before I fully like grasped what he was saying.
That's
but
just
then once I did, I was
way
like,
of talking.
"What the?"
That's his way of talking. It's a horrific insult that nobody in the world would think of but him. Great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies. And I'm really proud of myself for memorizing that.
I'm very proud. You probably watched it like 100 times.
Well, I've read it 100 times just to make sure I got it right.
Like, I'm pretty sure everything you send me, you watch it at least 10 times before you send it.
Yes, because I don't want to send you BS.
Exactly. So you're like, let's just proofread everything. Proof watch everything I send Olivia.
The thing is, you probably go, wow, he sends me a lot of things. Oh my, I do not send you a lot of things compared to the amount.
You spend so much time watching shit. Like, it boggles
Not just
my
watching,
mind.
it's listening as well. I always have something on. I'm always learning something. When I go to sleep, I'm not listening to music. I'm listening to documentaries. When I drive my car, I'm not listening to music. I'm listening to documentaries. It's sad. It's my music, but it's what I do.
But yeah.
It's yet.
No, it's great. Honestly, that's why you know so much about so many things.
For no reason.
I feel like that's also why you have so many interjections.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like, I need to do so much research on like the topics you choose so that I can like have things to talk about.
Make sure Thomas doesn't know.
Because like you're the history person. Yeah. Like in the end, I feel like if I started talking about like English literature, you would have like
ruined me. You ruined my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Mythology. If you want to destroy me, mythology is one. I don't know any mythology. It just does not interest me. I don't know why, but it just. I don't care about Zeus.
Mythology is only, I feel like mythology is only interesting if you know the context behind it. Like, I personally don't like mythology just for the sake of mythology either.
Yeah.
Like, I only like it if I know the historical background behind it. Like, who wrote this shit? Like, who was believing in this? Like, who was reading this, you know? Who was talking about these myths? And, like, how did that affect their lives? That's
mythology, literature. You'll get me on literature as well, like you said. Africa.
But it's boring when you have nothing to say.
I guess.
So, like, it's better when there's, like, fun things to talk about. That's why, like, especially this one, this is something that I know a lot about and that you know a lot about. Like, the industrialization is such an awesome period. But once again, like, I had no idea what the link was between Prince Albert's death and the entire Victorian Macabre.
What's interesting about this topic was we know so much about different aspects of the same topic. You know about this part of it. Well, I know about this part. Yeah. So. Which
is great. And like so many little details. Oh, I'm proud of us. Look at us being smart this episode.
Look at us go.
Look at us go. 10 out of 10.
Tune in next week and we'll go back to being stupid.
Oh my god, no.
I like this format though. I like this format.
Like
this one of us talks and the other one talks. You know?
I like that too.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Why don't we continue doing it this way?
I think so.
Like, we do an entire episode each. Because I feel like when we both talk about something, like, we're so preoccupied thinking about our own topic that we don't really, like, interact with the other person.
Plus, this time it's like, ooh, let's just focus on this one thing.
Yeah. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I agree. I like that.
Yeah.
So next week's your week, sir?
Yeah. Next week is mine.
What are you going to talk about?
Well, with Remembrance Day coming up.
Yeah.
I don't even think I'll have a topic. I think it was, just you ask questions. We'll just have a discussion week, you know?
As long as you could let me read Flanders Fields.
No, you can read Flanders Fields.
The whole thing.
I've read the whole thing on stage in front of a lot of people.
I have sang the whole
Oh.
thing on stage in front of a lot of people.
I didn't know you could sing it.
In Flanders fields,
Hey, spoilers.
the poppies blow. Between
Spoilers.
the crosses, row on row.
Spoilers.
Okay, we'll end it at that.
Okay. Well, this was a good week.
This was a good
This was.
week. I'm very proud of
Yeah.
us. I like this format too. It's a very good
Yeah.
format. I approve. Okay,
Okay,
cool.
bye everybody.
Okay,
See
bye
y'all next week.
everybody. See y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.